Your business model just made the most sense to me. Like, I didn't want to sell desert squares. That seemed ridiculous and kind of scammy. And I was like, ooh, I felt like penny stocks for land, And so I was like, not into that.
I've heard of big multi six figures getting scammed on things, and like from even posing as investors, fake deeds. I think it's easier than ever for people to attempt to scam people.
So I think just getting into it, realizing like, hey, this is a real business. You're starting a real company with real money involved. For some people, that's not going to be their jam,
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Ron Apke, joined today by Darrick Bourgeois. Darrick's been with us. He's been in the community for about 14 months or so. Darrick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I'm excited to get into your story. I know you've been very active in the community. I think, have you, I don't know, has your activity like in the Zooms and stuff slowed down over the last few months? Or I feel like I was seeing your name all over the place when you first started. I don't know if you just got busy with the business or something. Has that slowed down a little bit in terms of that, or you feel like you got it now?
Yeah, no, yeah, it absolutely slowed down. I think there was a time there, like obviously I came out of the gates hot,
Yeah.
wanting to learn as much as you can. And then once you learn that, you really want to, you want to put it to use. And so that's a lot of what I did. I just kind of dove into my process and starting to set everything up. And
Mm-hmm.
like I connected with a lot of people in the group and
Love it.
started just kind of like going right to them when I had questions and stuff. And so, yeah, so I wasn't, it was just easier to like go get the answer from the one person I knew had the answer rather than like
Yeah.
jumping in the Discord or jumping on the Zooms and waiting for questions to be answered. So, yeah, once you kind of get your like team of people that you have, which has been great. The community's
Yeah.
obviously been great. You kind of like, I stick a lot with them because I could, it's so much quicker.
Yeah, I feel like it's like the first like 2 months, like you're asking questions, and then the next 2 months you're like, I know these answers now. I want to help these people who just started, and then like
Yeah.
people get quiet, which is very normal. I like the cycle a lot. Well, you're a bartender. We talked a little bit off camera before this. You're a bartender who got into land investing, still bartending. Talk about how you found this business model. You said you've been an entrepreneur your whole life, though.
Yeah. Funny story. So, I started a record label when I was 19, back in Seattle. So that's where I'm from. And then to fund that, I was like, I need to do something. And so I kind of got into the service industry right when I turned 21. I started bartending, found that was like, it's such a great way to make easy, quick money. That I got into that and that helped fund that business. And then that I obviously had a life cycle. I ended up selling that 12 years later. And a portion of that, like near the end of my record label, I started getting into real estate, like buy and hold rentals, rehab rentals, that sort of stuff. Uh, and kind of got that real estate bug and I made money at it. And I was like, oh, that is something that I want to do long term.
Mm.
And then got into the fitness industry. I got bitten by the CrossFit bug. My wife and I did that. We owned two CrossFit gyms, large CrossFit gyms in Seattle. We did that for a little bit over 10 years, 10, 11 years. There was a COVID year in there. So do we count that? We had to shift the business and that's when we decided to sell as well and move on from that. And there was always this idea of like, once my gyms made it big, I was going to get back into real estate.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously life had different plans. We decided after we sold our gyms, we were like, let's do something else. So we actually got under contract to buy a Christmas tree farm, a 23-acre Christmas tree farm in Washington. We did that for a year. We worked on the farm for a year to kind of learn the processes and all that fun stuff. Turned that business around from what it was, and then that deal fell through after having it under contract for a year
Wow.
and turning their business around, which was like a gut punch. My wife and I decided at that point, like, there was nothing much left for us in Washington. We kind of had this bad taste in our mouth from a lot of different things. And so we decided to up and move to Tennessee. We sold everything, sold the gyms, sold our house, everything, moved across the country, Tennessee. And I was like, well, I'm going to get into real estate because that's what I knew. Obviously to like pay our bills and stuff, I went back and I got involved in bartending again because I was like, that's going to be easy money. I'm good at it. So I fell in with a really great restaurant in Nashville, started doing that. Really love that business. Like, customer service is kind of my jam, and it just turns out that I'm really a good bartender. So that made a lot of sense. I make good money doing it. And it opens up my days. And I got into retail real estate. Obviously, I got my real estate license. I'm going to go sell homes. And The problem was that I was giving up my nights with my family, and then I was giving up weekends for
Mm.
real estate. And so I was like not able to see my family. So I was like, I need to find that thing that allows me to, free up my time with my family, eventually be able to do this from anywhere, right? Something that I love, which is real estate as well. And which is how I found you guys. I mean, I think I looked at every land investing business online. I watched all your videos. I watched, the dirt, the cheap dirt guy. I forget what his. I forget. I mean, I went
Mhm.
through all of them. We had a call, I think, at some point, and your business model just made the most sense to me. Like secure the property, that way you maximize the leverage. And I didn't want to sell desert squares. That seemed ridiculous and kind of scammy. And I was like, ooh, it just felt weird. Felt like penny stocks for land,
Yeah.
And so I was like, not into that. And also anything that my wife and I ever dream about doing, she's here in the office. That's why I keep pointing. Anything that we dream about doing involved land, right? Like
Yeah.
when we first moved to Tennessee, we're like, we're going to get a house and we're going to get it on land and all that stuff. And obviously we had a Christmas tree farm, and we still have this dream of like having this Christmas tree farm down the road. And so I was like, I don't know anything about land. I was like, I'd love to get into that land space, become a land specialist, learn as much as I can about land. And when I found you guys, it just, everything there made sense to me about learning this process of buying and selling land.
Mhm.
And it seemed like that would be the best way to go. And so I jumped in last year, or 2 years, a year and a 14 months ago, just over
Yeah,
a
yeah,
year,
yeah.
a year ago. And started, learning the process and all that fun stuff. So that's how I got
Wow.
into it. And
That's a
it's
heck of
been
a
great.
journey. I love it. And it seems very natural, like you getting into land. Like it seems like it's right for you. Like this business model makes sense to you, like you said. And it fits you, fits your mission, fits your schedule too, which is important. Like you said, like you don't want to be away from your family 7 days a week. Like you're away at night right now with bartending.
Mhm.
But was there like a proof of concept moment that maybe it was before you did any marketing, you talked to someone who was like doing really well? Was there a proof of concept moment for you? Because for a lot of people, it's kind of abstract, the business model that we do, and it doesn't make sense. And you can try to tell them 100 times, and they still say it doesn't make sense. Was there that moment that, like, okay, this can work? I can see it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think going through so many different businesses, I've also had like eBay flip businesses. I did that for
Yep.
a while. And so I think that was a little bit of my proof of concept. Like that really it felt the same, right? It's just more zeros and it's different. It's a different product to me. Um, you make your money on the buy side and the sell side. The business model to me made sense from the beginning because of what I've done in the past. And it's a lot like any other business. Like you just have to do it for a while to become really good at it, right? Like
Hmm.
my first 7 years of running a gym were terrible. We didn't make any money. Like it was like a grind. We finally started making money year seven, which was like finally, right? Like that took me 7 years. Same thing with the record label was also a grind, and it took a long time to make money at that thing. I actually don't even know if it ever did. If you talk to my accountant, he'd be like, yeah, you lost money every year on that thing. So I just, but I saw a lot of people who stuck with that business, with the record label, with gyms, with other things where I'm like, oh yeah, I get that. Like you do anything long enough, you're going to get good at it, and you're not going
Hmm.
to be good at it at the beginning. And so I didn't have like big ideas of grandeur getting into this business that like, I was going to make 1 million a year. Of course, that's what you always want. You want that, giant payday right off the bat. But I also didn't have any ideas of grandeur that this was going to be any different than any other business that I had. I will say I was profitable at this business quicker than any other business I've started, right? I was able to make profit right away, get money in the bank, start paying myself. And so that's been a huge game changer for me in this business, which is good.
That's exciting. So you first got into it last October, 14 months. What did your education process look like after you got into it? Your education to when you first like started like marketing, targeting pieces of land. What did that kind of process look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was all YouTube videos. It was you guys jumping on as many calls as I could, watching. Like, I think I was on probably 2 months straight of your live calls of people buying, and you guys looking at the properties for us, like live, like looking at how that works, like that whole process of looking at a property, finding what's good about properties, what's bad about properties, which properties you want to avoid. Um, and so just diving down the rabbit hole of that, of trying to figure out what properties are good and what properties are bad. You
Mm-hmm.
know that, because for me, I didn't want, I couldn't afford to have bad deals, right? I
Yeah.
was like, I can't afford to like get a deal where I lose money. Um, I did sell a house in my retail business, and I took that money and put that into this directly, and so that was like my seed money, and that's what I was going to give it. I was like, y'all got, I think it was like 15K, and if I'm out of that 15K and I haven't made any money, this
Yeah.
business is done. Moving on to the next thing. So yeah,
That's
that
cool.
was
And a
that.
lot of people, I think that's the most successful people who like put money towards it. Like, this is what I'm gonna make. I'm gonna make it work with this money. And like, it's not like every $2,000 if they send a mailer that doesn't work, they're not freaking out and not quitting before that. Like, I'm gonna put I have $15,000. I'm gonna put into it. And if the business works, I'm gonna make it work with that money. So going there, when did you send your first marketing? Do you know?
Let's see, it was probably near the end of October. So I got 3 deals in my first 4 mailers.
Oh wow.
So I sent out a mailer to Tennessee because that's where I live. I sent out a deal. My first mailer was actually to Oklahoma, Tennessee, Georgia, and I think Kentucky. Kentucky, I
Hmm.
didn't get any deal from, but lots of calls, but no
Yeah.
deals. But my first 3 deals were Oklahoma, Georgia, and Tennessee were my first 3 deals out of my first 4 mailers. And yeah, that
So
was, yeah.
how much marketing are you sending per month?
So now, once I got those first 3 deals, that was all my 15,000 because I actually bought one with my own money as
Oh,
well. So I
nice.
spent, probably 4 grand in mailers. I had like 11 left. I was like, I'm buying my Oklahoma deal. I bought it for 8,000 because I had the money. I wanted to see what it felt like to do a deal by myself with not an
Yeah.
investor.
Would you sell
And
that for?
so I sold that one for, let's see, I have that here for 12. So I bought it for 8, sold
Okay.
for 12. Not a huge profit.
Mhm.
Um, but it was like one of those points where I was like out of money, right? So I'm like just looking for anything. And I was like, I bought them all in November. No, I had nothing in December, like no calls, no people like wanting to buy. And then the first 2 weeks of January, I sold all 3 of those deals, which I realized I'm like, okay, nobody buys
Yeah.
property in December because of the holidays. And I'm like, this is the worst time. But luckily I sold all 3 of those deals in the first 2 weeks of January, got them under contract, I should
Mhm.
say.
So
Um,
what did those 3 net you as far as, I know you said you had investors, you paid for one yourself. What did those 3 buy? Let's just talk buy and sell instead of netting. What did those
yeah,
you said you had 8 and 12. What did the other 2 look
in
like?
12, 14, the Georgia one was buy for 14, sell for 40.
Wow.
And then my Tennessee was a buy for 60, sell for 116.
It's not bad.
So yeah,
That's not so there's your proof of concept. There's some money in your pocket. So you sold all, I mean, let's say by the end of February, you all of a sudden you went from having the 15,000 and that was probably pushing 50,000 at that point, right?
correct. Yeah, it was somewhere between 45 and 50,000. Yep.
Okay, nice. And I don't know if we ever answered the question. How much marketing were you sending out at this point, like the first 5, 6 months of your business about?
So I mean, I did those first mailers and I was out of money, so I didn't do anything until I got that money
Okay.
back in my bank account because I was like, uh, yeah, that was it. Like I remember calling, um, oh my gosh, who's the you guys have a guy who calls people
Anthony?
on a Anthony. Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah.
I love Anthony. He would call me like on a regular basis and be like, "How's everything going?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm still out of money and I'm waiting for these deals to sell." And he took a look at the listings and stuff, and we made some tweaks and stuff and price changes. But it was great. And then after that, I was like, I kind of looked at my numbers and I was like, all right, so I'm getting, one deal per, you know, about 2,500 mailers or so. So that year I was like, all right, I'm sending out 30,000 mailers before my birthday, which is in June.
Got it.
And so I was like, that was my goal after that was just, I mean, this whole business is for me is volume, right? Like get mail out. Like if the
Mhm.
mail's not going out, you're not getting deals. If you're not getting deals, things aren't happening. So my whole thing was figure out a way to get 30,000 mailers out. I had the money for it then. And so I just started sending out, 4 to 5,000 mailers a month at that point to get to my 30,000 before the end of June,
And
which
that
was what
started
the
in
goal was.
February.
That started in February. Yep.
So let's back up a little bit because I would not advise you to buy that and go out all of your marketing money. Would you going back? Is that something like, oh crap, I probably shouldn't, because you probably wouldn't be able to get funding, buy for 8, sell for 12. Like, do you regret
Right.
like not trying to negotiate down and then get an investor or something? Like going back, is that something you would have done, which stalled your marketing for 2 months?
Oh yeah, would never do that again. I would 100%. I probably would have passed on that deal
Yeah,
altogether,
yeah,
just because there was never going to be enough meat on the bones for that one. So I probably would have passed on that deal altogether and just gone in with investors. And that, I mean, that became my thing, is like, just get mail out. And if you don't have the money for the deals, just get an investor
mm,
for the deals. Just make sure you're getting good enough deals to where an investor will want, and I think that's slowed. I did do, in this last year, I did do a double close, but at the same time, like, it slowed down a little bit of um, my ability to get deals, because now I need to have enough meat on the bone for an investor
mm,
to be like, it's worth it.
yeah,
So, and eventually I'll get to the point where I'm doing all my own deals. But at
for
this
sure.
point, it's just get the mail out the door, get the deals, get the good deals that an investor would be like, let's do it. And, you know, get as much under contract as possible.
Yeah. I mean, talk about your mindset around this time. Like, buy for 14, sell for 40 is not like that. That's an amazing deal. Buy for, what'd you say, 60, sell for 130? Uh,
116.
116, buy for 60,
Hmm.
sell for 116. Like, that's a awesome deal. Like, how'd that feel? Like, you just keep on going. Is that what your mindset, or is it like, okay, wow, I just got a really big check and I had no money out of my pocket? Was
Yeah.
there like a realization moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the realization of, just get the mail out the door and get more of these deals, right? These are
Mhm.
the deals that you want. You want these, the deals that you can buy and, 3x, at least 2x, if not 3x the money. Um, that's gonna have to be the business model until I can get, I can get the deals where it's, a buy for 30, sell for 50, where an investor wouldn't necessarily look at that and be like, the money's good enough, but then I could do it on my own. But I'm not there yet, right? I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to just continue to mail, get the deals that are really good, where an investor will come alongside me, which is also nice, honestly, having that extra set of eyes, from an experienced investor who can go, this is a great deal, I'll absolutely invest in it. So I think that was a big deal as well, of, that there's a benefit to having investors involved in the process as well. So I love that.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. So did you get those 33 mailers out, 30,000 mailers out before your birthday?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So what was
got
the
the
result of
30.
those? Let's talk about those a little bit.
Yep. So those were, I got those 30,000 mailers out, and I really started kind of pushing into areas. So in the group, I was still seeing a lot of people mailing the Southeast, right? You
Mm,
get, for whatever reason, the land is a little bit flatter here. There's not as much wetlands, whatever the case is. That was really a hotbed. So I was like, I'm going to not mail the Southeast. I'm going to start moving into some different areas. So I really got into more Midwest, Ohio, Indiana, Minnesota, Wisconsin. I started mailing those areas a little bit more. And I mean, because I think I did 3 mailers right away that I had ready to go. Because obviously, when I'm not sending out mail, I'm like, well, I can at least get these counties ready. I can buffer the list. I can't pay for the mail yet. So I had 3 mailers ready to go, all in the Southeast. Got those out the door right away. Didn't get any deals from them. And I'm like, it was one of those things where you're like, oh. And then I go back and sure enough, listen to some podcasts. And even you guys say, like, you're going to have those. You're going to have those streaks where you're going to send out mail. And then you're going to have a mailer where you're going to get 3 deals.
mhm.
And sure enough, my first mailer in Minnesota, I got a ton of calls. I got 2 good deals in Minnesota off that one mailer. And so I started mailing, I think I mailed 2 other counties that were like side by side to it, where the numbers worked in Minnesota. It was a good time. Obviously, summertime in Minnesota is beautiful. You can get good pictures, northern hemisphere stuff. So this was like, it was great. And it seemed like I was getting a lot of traction in the Midwest, in the spring and summer. And so yeah, that was kind of my game plan at that point. Um, and now, I'm sitting on, like I said, I have 6 more properties under contract. I've sold 2 other ones since the 3 that I originally sold. And I have 6 more to go that I'm still in the process of selling. So,
So 5
and
deals
some,
full cycle in your first, let's just say first year essentially,
yeah,
because
yeah,
you
yeah,
have
absolutely.
others that are already getting close to being full cycle. 5 deals, and what did those numbers look like on those 5 deals as far as total profit?
Yeah. So, one of the ones in Minnesota was a buy for 67. I sold for 110. And then one in Ohio was a buy for 30, sell for 70, which was a double close, which was great.
Mhm. Awesome. That's really so. Yeah, you've had looking back at this, and we talked a little bit off camera. Looking back at 2024, and you have six more. I don't. Do you know expected profit on those six that you have that you're selling?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have my board behind me. You look here. I have my estimated profit on some of them. So, um, most of them are in that like 20 to $40,000 range, and then
Okay.
some of them. I do have one in Wisconsin that we just found out was on a. This is a funny story. It happened to be a dump site that we didn't know. It
Oh
wasn't
goodness.
wasn't listed anywhere. We get a perk test down. He's like, we're finding pieces of cars, and so that one went down to a 10K profit. But most of them are in that like 20 to $40,000 range profit wise.
Yeah, so another 100, 120, 150, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, going back to that question, like, would you view 2024 as success in your land flipping business? Did you have higher expectations? What are you looking back at this year? We're getting close to the end of the year. Like, how would you kind of look back and like assess it?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I, everybody has dreams. I got big dreams. Obviously, I want to be done bartending so I can, see my family at nighttime as well. And that was like a big goal this year was to get out of bartending. It didn't happen, which is fine. And so I have the way I have my business set up. My idea was I used to get into big problems running businesses about growing too quickly. I expanded really quickly in my gyms. I had two locations, two and a half locations, 400 members, grew really quickly. And like I said, that was a big issue. As soon as we reduced my business size, I started making money. So when I got into this business, the whole thing was don't get too big too quick, right? So I have this mentality of not trying to get in over my head too far, not going into debt, all that fun stuff. So I've done that, right?
Hmm.
I've grown slow. I've learned a ton. I think that was huge for me this year. I did start paying myself. So for every 50,000, excuse me, $50,000 I get in my bank account, I take $1,000 paycheck a month. So I hit that $50,000 mark. I started taking my $1,000 a month to start like helping out
Yeah.
paying bills and all that fun stuff, which is great. When I hit that $100,000 mark, I'll start taking 2,000. When I hit that 150, I'll start taking 3,000. So the goal is to get to you know 200 to 250,000 of cash in the bank before I quit bartending. So that's kind of the goal in this next year. So I
Hmm.
didn't hit that this year, but that's going to be the goal for next year. Um, I will probably be dropping a shift at the bar. So right now I work 4 days a week. I'm probably going to go down to three. If my managers are watching this, it's coming down the pipe. Um, and so yeah, I mean that's reducing. I'll be easing my way out of bartending rather than just quitting altogether, which is great. With the incoming president where he says they're not gonna tax tips anymore. It's gonna make it a little bit harder to quit now that I'm making
Yeah,
an extra 30% in my paycheck every month. But yeah, that'll be interesting. So
that's a
that's
big
the
deal for sure. Yep.
yeah the goal this
Um,
year will be quit bartending.
Okay. So looking at 2025, is there anything? So one thing that I've noticed just talking to you for these 20 minutes is you're very like, okay, how Ron and Dan teach it, like this is what I'm doing. And you've just been like consistency. Is there anything that you're doing different in your business or that you plan on doing different in your business that might not be exactly because you're at the point where like, okay, now we can try a little bit of a niche here or there, whatever it
Mhm.
is. What are your thoughts on that? Or do you have any plans for anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. So um obviously, so I've started looking into December's a slow month, so I'm using December as my education
Love
month.
it.
So I'm really diving into looking into text messaging. So that seems to be a big, you guys are pushing that a lot. So I'm doing some research on text messaging. Um, I also was on the cusp of getting a subdivide deal in Vermont that
Ooh,
kind of fell through. Somebody else came in and made an offer, and they decided to go with that one instead of ours. But that kind of like started scratching that itch for larger parcels. So what I've actually done the last, I don't know, 3 weeks was I downloaded some data from a county here locally in Tennessee, and I just pulled 20 acres all the way up and went through after I scrubbed the list, I ended up with about 250 parcels. So I actually went through every single parcel and like looked at it, deleted all the ones that I was never going to buy, right? The ones that have slope or too much wetlands, all that fun stuff. And so I'm gonna send out a mailer that's like much more targeted to subdivide, like
Mm,
like land that's specifically flat, square, great for a subdivide, and pricing a little bit higher, knowing that I'm gonna break off parcels and sell them for a higher amount. So um, yeah, so I'm looking at doing that. And then I have a buddy who's really, and we did this also when I owned the gym, was a pay per click marketing, like sell us your land, seeing if I can get leads through a pay per click type of business model as well. And he thinks he can help me out with that. So something along those lines might also be happening in 2025. We'll see how that goes. But texting probably for sure at some point. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if it's going to be like cold text or if it's going to be follow up text. I feel like I'm probably going to start with follow up text where they're going to get
yep.
the mail and then they're going to follow up with a text message, connecting the dots, and see how that goes. So I'll be trying out some things next year for sure.
Nice. Little disclaimer for people listening with pay per clicks. I was talking to someone, and I've never done it for land, but he said about 80% of the leads that he got were like high level scammers, like not
Mhm.
like minimal scammers, like fake deeds. Like they're trying to get. So just this is purely a disclaimer for people listening. Like paperclip is going to have high scam. I'm sure it's with wholesaling and everything like that as well. And I'm sure you're. I don't know if Derek, have you seen those or are you aware of those or has he talked about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I just in the last like probably since this past summer, as I was getting calls, I started hearing people talk a lot about scams. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, it's so interesting. I don't understand how you would scam. I don't have the mind of a criminal, so I don't understand how somebody would scam somebody with land. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many things in place, right? Like deeds and title companies and checking IDs and all the things that are involved with buying and selling land. I don't understand how people are scamming. It feels like there's enough uh, things in place to where I don't know what that looks like, but it'll be interesting to kind of go down
Yeah.
that road and find out how people are scamming so I can avoid those things when it comes to pay per click. But yeah,
Title companies have definitely locked down on like they are trying to prevent like title companies have really increased their like getting more wet signatures. Like there's a lot more even banks releasing wires has become more difficult. They're always calling you and trying to confirm everything. And how do you know this person? Why are you sending them a wire? So there's definitely more things in place, I think, from that aspect. And it
yeah,
sucks. Like someone getting like I've heard of big multi six figure like people getting scammed on things and like
wow,
from even posing as investors and there's a lot within any community within anything like you're gonna see it especially with like I think it's easier than ever for people to attempt to scam people but what would be your advice for someone Derek looking to get into this business like do you think this business like any type of personality can be successful in this business or
mhm.
what's kind of your advice for someone looking to get in.
Yeah, that is actually a really great question because I think about this a lot. Obviously, I talk about land investing. I talk to a lot of people, bartending and stuff, and people always ask, oh, what else are you doing, right? Because every bartender has, especially in Nashville,
Mm,
people want to find the next big, music country star. So what are you doing during the day, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm in real estate. So I talk to a lot of people, and everybody thinks it's very interesting. But running so many different kinds of businesses, I also get the pain points of this business. I get where people are going to fall off. Like there's definitely parts here, like getting hate calls. Like at the very least, getting
mm,
hate calls is challenging, right? I look at that as kind of there's a benefit to getting those hate calls, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But like there's pain points in this business that where I can see this business isn't for everybody. And I think we tend to look at it, young entrepreneurs or people who are just getting this being like, oh my gosh, you guys are selling this program to thousands of people. And I'm like, there's probably 10% of these people who are going to make this past a year because it's not as, you know, straightforward as it seems. It's not like I can go to an estate sale and I can buy something at an estate sale and flip it on eBay, which also has its own issues. This is a much larger, like you're sending out mail, you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with there's a lot of things where people are gonna be like, that's not for me, that's gonna be too much of a time crunch or whatever. So I think just getting into it, realizing like, hey, this is a real business. This isn't like a get rich quick thing. Like you're starting a real company with real money involved. And there's absolutely this possibility of making good money in this business, but like you got to be able to like stick to it. Like you got to be
yeah.
able to, make the calls, answer the phone call, even though it's somebody who's going to call and yell at you. You have to be able to scrub data. Like you have to
Yeah.
sit behind a computer for an hour a day and scrub some data, which like for some people, that's not going to be their jam. So there's a lot to it that isn't just like I bought some land and then I sold it for this amount. It's a fun story to tell, but like there's so much more to it than that.
That's a good
So,
point.
dig into it, grind it out. And like I said, I think it's a great business. You can do it from anywhere. There's so many great things about this business, and the profits are so great that like it's 100% worth the time, effort, and money to get into this. But yeah, and it's a fun story to be like, I bought for
Yeah.
10 and sold for 200, but in all reality, we were talking a little bit offline, like that's a good deal, but like you're not going to learn a ton from that one deal. But I think doing a bunch of $20,000, $30,000 deals over and over and over again over the next 5 years is going to make you a master at this.
Yeah.
So realizing that this is going to be, a 5 year grind to make it a amazing, huge business, like, and not many people are going to make it there.
Yeah.
That's the real talk.
And yeah, a lot of good points there. And you're an entrepreneur through and through. But understanding that other aspect of like mindsets of people who aren't like naturally entrepreneurs. The reality is if you're not willing to like go through some tough times, like you probably should just stick to your W-2 job and like stick behind a desk and or your remote job, whatever it is. Cause like everything, you're not gonna get some like there's not a real like get rich quick scheme. There just aren't any that are sustainable. Like there might be some scams and stuff, but that's not get rich quick. That's not a business. That's not being an entrepreneur. But as far as like the opportunity level in land, like I don't believe there's any other better spot like for I don't even like saying the word fast or quick or but it's like for really changing your life. Like you had $15,000 to your name or that you're willing to put into this business, not to your name 12 months ago and you turn that into I mean unseen equity like probably $120,000 in a year. And like you said, like there's not many businesses you can do that, but without a doubt, it's got its ups and downs. I just recorded a podcast with Adam, which came out, I guess a few days ago or when we're recording this or when this comes out and Adam like he didn't have struggles at the beginning. He made $45,000 in his first like month 2 months and then he had like 6 months of struggles. The struggles are going to come. It's just you don't know exactly when and getting through them. The mindset of an entrepreneur, not even a land investor, the mindset of an entrepreneur is definitely needed in this business.
Yeah, 100%. I think, approaching it like that, approaching it like a real business and something that's like, you know, it's awesome if you do get those deals, like incredible. Like I would love to do those deals all the time. But I mean, even something like as simple, not as simple, but as big as a subdivide, right? You're talking, it sounds awesome, but that's going to be probably a 6 month deal, right? Like going in, getting it all chopped up, getting it back on the
Mhm.
market and selling them all. Like it's not going to be quick at all, but the profit and everything is there, and just making sure that you're staying focused and keep pushing forward is going to be the biggest thing.
100%. Any other advice before we end this, Derek? Anything else you want the viewers, the listeners to know about in terms of this bit in general, about your story, anything like that?
Yeah, I will say this. There's one thing that we talk about a lot in this community, and it's the hate calls, right? Because that's,
Mm,
I think that's a big part for people who are like, oh, I don't even answer the phone. And I fell into this a little bit, like, I don't answer the phone for the first couple days because I know once the mail hits, those first 2 days are probably all hate calls. The difference is that I saw an opportunity there, and so what I started doing was answering those calls and being like, I can hear that you're very passionate about your land. Like, first of all, calm them down, right? You don't get fired up. They won't, they'll calm down. And you go, I can tell you're passionate about your land. Are you interested in buying more land in that area? Because as you
mm,
can see, if people do sell me land, I'm getting it at a discount and I can sell it to you at a discount. And a lot of times, like right away, people go like, oh, actually, yes, I would like to buy some land. Like, you could, and then you just add them real quick to a buyer's list. And so when you do get a deal in that county
love
that
it.
you just mailed, you have 3 or 4 people who are already interested possibly in buying that land from you right away, right? And you go to them at 90% of market value and they're excited because they're getting a deal. And so it's just you can kind of talk them off the ledge a little bit while they're yelling at you and be like,
Yeah,
totally get it. You don't have to sell me your land, but I can hear that you're passionate about your land that you have. I love that. I'd love to sell you more.
awesome.
And
I'm sure
so
that
turn
de-escalates.
100% right
Yeah,
away. People are like, oh, because then they're like, I would like more land and I would like it at a discount, you know?
Mhm. Yeah,
So
they can't argue with that. Awesome, Derek. Well, I really appreciate you going through your story, the advice. Very interesting background, entrepreneur background, record label, almost bought a Christmas tree farm, bartending, all this stuff. So excited for where you're going in 2025. I think it's going to be a huge year for you. Other than that, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button below. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, share it with a friend. Derek's in our Discord, very active in our Discord. Shoot him a message if you have any questions. Other than that, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
thanks, guys.
As always, thank you for joining. Please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe our YouTube channel and share this with a friend. It really means the world to Ron and I, but more importantly, it could help change the life of someone else. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next episode.